The whole budget hearings meeting for Tuesday, October 29th will please come back to order. Next on our agenda, we have the Department of Public Safety and Justice Services, Alex Pelham. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, sir. First, Alex Pelham, Director of Public Safety and Justice Services. I just want to thank the council members that are here as well as the other staff for allowing me to present on the budget that serves the men and women that make up our department. A quick departmental overview. I think the spread show that each one of you got before lays out each of the questions that you had beforehand, so I wanted to get it in a neat way and then answer questions that you had. Our department is made up of 5 divisions and a couple of partnerships. The divisions are the administration, which I lead, obviously, but we're working on strategic planning to lay a foundation as well as to lay a future of where we're going in our department. The next is CCOMS, which is our emergency communications and 911 call center and dispatching services. Annually they receive over 400,000 wireless calls, and that number continues to go up. They provide emergency dispatch for City of East Cleveland, and our 911 coordinator serves as the lead for the countywide 911 planning group per ORC. The next is emergency management. Emergency management provides the planning, preparedness, and coordinated response as outlined in ORC. Our emergency management program serves as the only local or county-based program in the state of Ohio that has the EMAP accreditation, which is the highest level of emergency management accreditation you can have. And our emergency manager, Mark Christie, serves as the president now on the Emergency Managers Association of Ohio. Those 2 things, as well as other initiatives that this group takes place in, really put us in the forefront and serve us as a lead and a model of what emergency management should be in the state. Our fiscal grants team currently serves as a fiscal agent for 4 main disciplines, which include emergency management, forensic science, homeland security, and justice services, as well as the management of the money and the processing of what Councilman Tuma referred to as mini grants in the last budget proceeding. Our witness victim services provides court-based advocacy. I know there'll be some more questions on that from yesterday's presentation, so I won't go too in-depth here. Our Family Justice Center provides a one-stop shop to where victims of crime, regardless of where you are, can come in, get information, and either get services or be directed to appropriate services with a group of partners, whether it be private or public, that help. We also have 2 partnerships. One of those is the Family Justice Center, which is with the City of Cleveland and numerous partners, as well as the Northeast Ohio Fusion Center, which outlines the terrorism and intel side of the house to prevent homeland security issues. This is an organizational chart. This is more for reference for what you're looking at in the background side of the house. This outlines each of our positions that fall under the department. One of the questions I know was the departmental FTEs. So we have 77 FTEs, but I would note that there's 79 positions. We have 4 part-time positions. So in the old school method of a 0.5 FTE is a part-time. That's why you'll see the difference in the 79, which is operational, and the 77 total. I would note that Chief Carney, excuse me, my boss, I should know that. Chief Carney's position falls under the administration budget and also accounts for one of these FTEs. The vacancies which were requested, we have 6 overall vacancies. They're outlined here, so I don't want to read off every one of them. We're in the process of filling or getting approval from the Chief of Staff to fill each one of these. As you can tell, I've noted by a couple of annotations, the CCOMS positions, which are the supervisor and the call taker, are paid for out of the Special Revenue Fund, and the Justice System Advocates are from the HHS levy. The funding side of the house. So much like Ms. Byrd that you heard from the clerk's office earlier, Chief Carney noted a 5% cut across our department. Some are a little more, some are a little less. Emergency management was 4%. There were a couple that had 7%. It came out to roughly 5.7% of a cut. In the general fund budget in the HHS, it shows here that there's a negative 2% drop, but I'd like to clarify a couple of things on this 20% increase. Over 60% of that increase is in controlled costs, so it's not operational costs that I can touch. And everything except for $3,000 is an increase to match what we came to you earlier with the revenue contract with the City of Cleveland for the operation of the Family Justice Center. So it's roughly a $3,000 increase when you take away controlled costs and the upping to match the City of Cleveland's. The next question were there any new initiatives proposed? At this, yes, there were two that were proposed. One was the expansion of the Rescue Task Force concept, which is a concept that trains, outfits, and utilizes first responders for active shooter incidents to respond quicker, as well as one of the trends that you'll see if you do some research into the first responder mental health side. So not to the aspect of what we talk a lot about today with the mental health side of how our law enforcement interact with individuals that have mental health issues, but this was projected to look more at the actual mental health of our first responders. If you dig in, there's some very disturbing and alarming studies that you can see where suicide rate and addiction rate is higher in that population. I think New York City alone has lost 10 officers of suicide this year. So there are also different multipliers, whether it be marriage problems, addiction problems, that amplify those percentages significantly.
Sir, are these two numbers here on an annual basis for the cost?
These were for the 2 year, for both years, so they were split up between. The first one was roughly $600,000 because Rescue Task Force expansion. The first year of that was heavier due to the potential buying of equipment to push out to the community. The second part was an enhanced training and backfill, because that's one of the problems that we hear from a lot of our partners is that they can't send people because they can't afford it, for lack of better words. Neither one of these projects are included in the budget, but I know this group wanted to know what we have presented as potential new initiatives, regardless.
Right. Thank you.
As a final, to echo a little bit of what Ms. Byrd also said, we don't foresee any staffing cuts in this. We believe that there's some ability to move money. Thank you to Maggie and her group. She took some left field questions from me last week and was very accommodating. But the people in this division or in this department are the most important thing. And I will, as I told you a year ago when I stood here, that's what I focus on. That's what I believe is the biggest return on our money. And so I do believe that the current initiatives that we have, we can do, as long as we're able to fill the positions when the vacancies come up and not take any reductions in force.
Okay. Thank you. Questions? Ms. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the questions that came up when I was out in the community was the ability to respond to how text 911, which is something I advocated for, would work in a community where there might be an activity involving a vehicle, and they could maybe identify that vehicle in a city of Cleveland. Can you kind of elaborate on that? I'm not really sure, because it's not a highly publicized thing that we have text 911. Mm-hmm. And what's been happening specifically in the city of Cleveland is an incidence of maybe dumping or drug trafficking. People might be able to get the information, but by the time the police arrive, the offender may be long gone. So can you kind of touch on that, if that's a service that we can provide to the community to be of more assistance?
We have the text to 911 through the chair to Councilwoman Brown. We have the text to 911 service that works. If we're talking about a kind of a data collection point, I don't want to talk for Cleveland, because they're one of the two that they're the only other person that takes wireless calls in the county besides CCOM. So
Okay.
there is a small separation. So a little bit I'll take one step back so we can go forward. CCOMs, which is under my department, takes 911 wireless calls for everyone except for the city of Cleveland.
Okay.
I would note that there are, because of the way cell towers go and how it's not an exact science, we do receive a ton of calls from the city of Cleveland still. That's something I can go back and look to see if there, what the rate of that is, if there's an issue with the transfer. Is it an issue with the transferring of the data, or just a compilation, or just a knowledge of it?
Knowledge and compilation, and we can talk about it offline, but I did want to put it before this body in the event that more support is needed, because as we all know, the crime is increasing and it's very heavy in some parts of my district, and there are not enough local policemen to handle some of the issues that are coming before the police. So I'm just hoping to find a solution to help eradicate some of the crimes.
Absolutely. I'd be more than willing to talk a little offline.
Thank you.
Councilman Gallagher.
And one of those initiatives about the first responders, the state of Ohio has taken that up, so that's completely unnecessary from our part as far as I can see. And that looks like that legislation is going to move swiftly, and the governor's already supported it, so I don't think that should be an issue. Witness victim services, why do we have two? I didn't really get a good answer yesterday. I'm hoping for a good answer today.
I'll give you the best answer I can, sir.
Best answer would be we only need one, and it should be
It'll be
under
the
one
truth.
roof.
So, I think there's a fundamental, or I know there's a fundamental way that you look at the way, and Jill is here just in case we go down a real rabbit hole, but I think I can answer it for you. There's really a fundamental two different approaches that advocacy takes. One deal is a system-based, which is utilized in the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office, where if there are charges against, or if there are charges present, that victim is either provided advocacy through, I believe it's the 3 advocates that the prosecutor has, or they are referred over to our major trials and felony group. We've seen an increase in those referrals over to our side of the house. What we don't operate as a complete community-based approach, but we are, if you will, we like a community-based approach. So with that, it is the focus of the victim or the survivor that is coming forward and needing services. With that comes a level of confidentiality with VAWA, the victim or violent acts against women. That grant, there are certain confidentiality rules that if you don't abide by them, you can't even receive the grant. So one is an approach from if there are charges pending, they can provide services. Some of the things that Jill and that group does, and I think they do it really well, is, if there's a homicide and this family needs advocacy, they need help, they need to understand what their rights are and where they can move forward. If this goes on for a year or 2 years, that may not be picked up anywhere else. That's what our group does. That group, the Witness Victim Services, as well as the FJC walk-ins, provide an opportunity whether there are charges or not. I think it's a good point of whether someone wants to pursue charges or not, because that doesn't always happen as well as providing efforts and the ability based on what the victim wants versus, and please don't construe anything that I'm saying as a negative towards prosecutors. It's not what it is at all. As a system-based approach, the prosecutor's main job is to prosecute and to serve as a law enforcement agency. Our side take a step back, looks more at the victim rights, looks solely at the victim's rights, ensuring that person has a voice, whether there are charges or not. Yeah. And I know your question is, should there be one or should there be two?
Well, I've even taken that as an answer. I've yet to hear an answer why there are two.
I don't know that I will kind of echo a little bit of what the prosecutor said. I don't know why there were two to begin with. As you know, I'm not a long timer here. But I will say that there is an enhanced level, even since I've been here, of cooperation and partnership between that team, because they do refer a ton of cases over to our side. There's relationships that have grown. There's trainings that have sat down that have brought both staffs together, prosecutors, whether it be attorneys, as well as our advocates. And even since November of 18, there's growth and there's better working relationship. Not that it was bad, than it was then.
Well, it just seemed to me that prosecutors first on the list when you're talking, victims. So it'd probably be better from that era, coming from that area. And he seems more than willing to take it over. His concern has been questioning this, and actually the administration's recommended one. So we're going to have to take a tough look at that. I don't know if that saves any money, time, or product to those that need, but anyhow, we'll talk further about that. If I could, probably it might not be the right person to ask, but I saw Ms. Carney was here. Could we get the exact number of hours that it takes to run the jail each year?
Exact number of hours.
We're all up here discussing batting back and forth numbers of COs and deputy sheriffs and who does what. What is it? What's that number? There's got to be a number of hours that it takes to run the jail sufficiently and within the standards that the state has prescribed. If we can get to that, I think then we go to the discussion on personnel. So I know that's been asked. Maybe we could do that. I know we have a contract with COs and built-in overtime and things like that will be adjusted. But I just love to know that number, and I think that helps us moving forward. Okay.
I will definitely pass that on
Thank
to
you.
Chief Carney. And if I could add, I would just ask that when that consideration with the advocates and where they are, to look at those victims that don't have charges filed against them and where the gaps, if that happens, because that's a group that may go unserved if there's not.
I don't think so. That would have to be proved to me. And quite honestly, I'm seeing a turf war here. And when we came on, we all talked about consolidating services. And if this isn't one of those, I'd be surprised. So I don't think the prosecutor, if he were running the show, or you, if you were running the show, would let a victim slip through the cracks. So.
Oh, and I apologies if I imply that's
No,
not.
I'm honestly, I'm seeing a little turf war here, and that raises my red flag even higher.
Director, I looked at the budget book, and from 2013 or so to the present, the staffing in your department has gone down quite a bit. Has there been some reorganization and some functions moved to other agencies?
Yes, sir. So in the last budget process, mediation went from this to the courts. That was a reduction out of our group. I'm not 100% sure where the staffing number in there, because we have 79 positions right now. But the mediation is the biggest. There have been a couple of spots, I believe, here and there that have been taken off, but that would be the whole grouping that would make a large difference.
Okay. Any other questions? Ms. Baker?
If I can add to the ask of Councilman Gallagher, not only the number that it takes to run the jail efficiently, but what does it take to eliminate the red zoning? I think our sheriff this morning said that it was reduced, but what does it take, whether it's number of inmates or whether it's number of COs, or maybe it's a combination of both, but where are we in that strategy of trying to bring a jail to order, does red zoning fit in, and where can we eliminate it? At what number is it eliminated? Thank you.
I'll definitely pass that on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, to my colleagues, just for scheduling, we're scheduled to end at 12 noon, but I think we could go till about 12:15 or so, but we do want to allow some time for people to regroup before public safety at 1 o'clock. And if we need to, we can hold a couple of departments over, but hopefully that won't be necessary. And next on our agenda is Mr. Ted Carter to talk about Department of Development.
Just checking whether it's still morning. I should say good morning.
Good morning. We got an early start this morning.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good morning. Ted Carter, Director of Development. Thank you, members of council, for the opportunity to speak to you on the Department of Development's budget request for 2020 and 2021. We have been granted level funding for the next budget cycle for an appropriation of $2.9 million out of our general fund for operating, administration, and overhead, and are confident that we can achieve our goals and objectives with this funding through the continued creative and prudent management of our budget, as I will illustrate. This level of funding will allow us to maintain staffing and maintain current levels of operating support to organizations important to the county's economic development work. Our mission is to drive regional economic growth through revitalization of neighborhoods, through placemaking investment, and provision of capital for business expansion to include workforce investments. All of this is executed through partnerships, of which we have about 30, and enable us to leverage and scale our activities with a focus on advancing the objectives of Cuyahoga County's economic development plan. To this end, we strive to be a center of economic development, community development, and workforce excellence and innovation. We are a small department with 36 total FTEs, 5 in economic development, 11 in community development and housing, 10 in workforce innovation, 5 in finance, 2 in loan portfolio management, and 3 in administration. I would like to emphasize the work that has been done the past 3 years to complete the reconciliation and remediation of our economic development loan portfolio. With no budget increase, we reallocated existing resources to add 2 dedicated portfolio management staff who have allowed us to perfect the portfolio to a level of confidence in the servicing of our 307 economic development loans. The work of our portfolio management staff gives us greater confidence that the funds we loan will in fact be repaid for use in making future loans. These increased repayments have allowed the Budget Office to raise its revenue estimate for 2020 to $2.9 million, above the conservative $2 million estimate that was authorized in past years. Development has fiduciary responsibility for funding totaling $23 million for the current year 2019. This funding includes 6 sources. One of the major funding sources is $6.7 million in federal grants from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for community development, affordable housing, lead paint remediation, and homeless prevention. Examples of the projects and programs supported with these federal funds in the past 2 years include La Villa Hispana Apartments in Cleveland, where a HUD-funded $450,000 forgivable loan leveraged an additional $7 million investment to the project. Over $300,000 in funding to nonprofit organizations to educate and prevent mortgage and tax foreclosures, and Americans with Disability Act improvements to public buildings. Other funds we administer include a portion of the county's casino tax revenue, demolition, brownfields, and a portion of the county housing program authorized by council this year. We also operate the Skill Up Workforce Innovation Program using Health and Human Services levy funding. In the current 2-year budget cycle, our Skill Up staff have engaged 420 businesses with assessments of their talent needs and other needs to support their growth. From these assessments, our Skill Up staff have co-created 125 custom roadmaps laying out training needs and resources with 548 employees entering training. Our general fund budget allows us to provide operating support. Our general fund budget allows us to provide both operating support and capital funding to partners who help to advance the county's 5-year economic development plan objectives. The Economic Development Fund is scheduled to receive an additional $4 million each year from casino tax revenue received by Cuyahoga County. This fund supports both our direct lending to businesses and additional economic development funding through capital partners. We have taken the approach of supporting a continuum of capital with both funding and technical assistance available to support entrepreneurs at each stage of growth of their company. This is from our support of ECDI, which focuses on neighborhood-based micro-lending, to Jumpstart, which supports high-growth companies, which eventually can result in them going public, as in the case of Cover My Meds. Our capital partners in providing this funding and technical assistance are the Workforce Funders Group, our Business Growth Collaborative in partnership with the Greater Cleveland Partnership, our Capital Access Fund, which is operated by the National Development Council with significant engagement by the Urban League, our Economic and Community Development Institute, ECDI, our Grow Cuyahoga Fund, Growth Opportunities Partners, Jumpstart, and United States Small Business Administration, and the 6 cities making performance grants to leverage SBA insured loans. Directly and through our partners in the current 2-year budget cycle to date, we have supported the growth of 297 businesses, investing $21 million of county funds, creating and retaining 1,343 permanent jobs, plus 1,200 construction jobs. This funding leveraged additional capital investment of more than $278 million and created substantial additional economic activity from supply chain purchases and spending by employees and assisted companies. Examples of some of the economic development projects that Economic Development Fund supported in the past 2-year budget cycle include the Church and State mixed-use development in Ohio City, leveraging a $2 million county loan to support $56 million in total funding. The new Lumen apartment building on Playhouse Square, leveraging a $10 million county loan. A new location for IMS Medical Supply in Parma Heights, attracting this company from out of state and leveraging a $300,000 county loan to over $900,000 in total project funding. A plant expansion for Tervis Manufacturing in Euclid, which utilized a $240,000 county loan to a total of $600,000 project. The attraction of the corporate headquarters of Covia Holdings to Independence, which utilized a $500,000 county loan, leveraging total spending over $3.7 million and adding 128 headquarters jobs. Key areas of focus for the next budget cycle: integrating the 3 primary verticals of our office, economic development, workforce innovation, and community development and housing, into the work of the opportunity zones and creating tangible project results in our 64 opportunity zones. Partnering with the land bank to implement and drive clear results with respect to housing program implementation. Continued investment of economic development capital with a focus on tech innovation and manufacturing. Completing the build-out of the sector partnership and sector intermediary work, where we stood up 2 of 3 sector intermediaries to date in the manufacturing and healthcare sectors. The remaining sector that we will focus on in 2020 is the IT sector. Focus on business expansion and creation with a focus on tech innovation. And then lastly, continued work of the Skill Up program, engaging business outreach and obtaining more HHS client employment. That is my testimony, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. And questions by my colleagues? So I'm gonna start. Can you tell me how much money is in this budget for the Skill Up program, or is it funded from money that was already previously appropriated?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. I can't tell you exactly how much money resides in the HHS budget, and so they would have to. Oh, okay.
We're going to ask a friend.
Okay, that's a good friend to have.
Maggie Keenan, Office of Budget Management. It's about $3 million, and it's in the Department of HHS budget.
And is that per year, or
Yes.
$3 million per year for 20 and 21?
Yes.
Okay, fine, thank you. And Director, as I understand it, there's workforce development programs going on in 3 places at least. There's Department of Development, there's our workforce development, and there's Ohio Means Jobs. Can you tell me how these 3 are related to each other and how they interact and work together?
Sorry, could I just correct myself? It's about $2 million a year for Skill Up.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Yes, so you're correct, Mr. Chairman. There are 3 workforce entities, Ohio Means Jobs being the primary one. And so our Skill Up program is now integrated and co-markets with the providers of Ohio Means Jobs. So you'll hear next from the director of Ohio Means Jobs, and he'll go into that in a little more detail. The systems and strategic approach is with our workforce systems program called Workforce Connect. And so Skill Up will also work with the intermediaries that are being established in each of those sectors. The third one, I'm sorry, I heard your third example was?
Well, I actually considered the county and the state workforce to be somewhat separate, but maybe they're not. So maybe there's just development and workforce.
Yeah, Ohio Means Jobs is a city-county entity.
Mm-hmm. Okay, right. Fine. Okay, other questions? Ms. Baker.
Thank you. And I know we've talked about this in the past. Your department has expanded beyond when I believe you first came, and it was solely focused on jobs, retain, create, search, the whole, where now we are expanded, I believe, to demolition, brownfields, housing. Do you find that, although these are all, good objectives, does it take it away from your initial mission, or do you find that you're distracted in what we hope that the Economic Development Committee would be focused on, and that is to retain and create and focus on keeping jobs here and workforce development and skills and all those kind of things that are really very central of economic development?
I appreciate the question. We have talked about on this book. I look at it, and I think the executive does as well, as an integrated approach. So each of those verticals are solely focused on their purview. So Mike May and his team are focused on job creation. Sarah Parks Jackson and her team are focused on the housing community development, so that is a legacy entity within my department. Demolition was added about 7 years ago, and so that preceded my arrival. The workforce dimension is the newest element of the office, and in our profession, that is central to economic development, because now businesses, when they are looking at other geographies to relocate to, it's not just the incentive package that is being considered or the tax environment, it's also the ability to provide skilled labor. And so we saw that clear and present during the HQ1 Amazon, where we were perceived as deficient in our ability to provide tech talent and at scale and at the velocity they needed. So I look at it as synergistic. When we are growing our population, we need to create great neighborhoods through our placemaking investment. So that's why we've invested in downtown the way we have over the last several years. The workforce, again, is foundational to job growth and job creation. So it's not a distraction. And so what we're working toward really in 2020, particularly around these opportunity zones, is integrating these 3 verticals to have more impact, whether it's in the job creation, placemaking, or the development of workforce and talent. And we're doing that strategically at a systems level through Workforce Connect. So I want to honor your point about distractions. We have a complex office that I lead, and so my job is to kind of integrate, and working with our new Deputy Chief, Paul Herdig, is to eliminate distractions and focus on the core mission. And
Right, and that, of course, as I said, these are important: demolition, brownfields, housing, all that. Of course, it's interconnected. I just was always concerned that focusing on perhaps those expanded, huge, really, undertakings can take you away from your mission of creating and retaining, knowing what businesses are here, what businesses are leaving, who wants to come, who we can reach out to that may want to come, all those kind of huge undertakings that are outside of housing and brownfields. And I would put workforce development and training in there with economic development, there's no question.
Okay. I would
That was only my concern.
Councilwoman, since you mentioned demolition twice, I'd just used Amazon in, not Warrensville, I'm blanking on the town at the moment. North Randall. So that was initiated by the land bank being able to demo that property, which made it attractive to the developer, then, construct the balance of that distribution center. So there's the integration of demo and economic development. And although the Department of Development didn't provide a direct loan in that instance, working with our public works partners, we provided infrastructure grant in conjunction with the state and other parties to make that project a reality, as well as the one in Euclid. And so the good news is, I mentioned our 30 or so partners. We work very effectively with these parties to, in those different dimensions as well. And so with Team Neo and GCP, I'm never satisfied. I always think we can do better, so I would never tell you that there's not more work to be done. But I hear your point, but I continue to believe that our office is structured appropriately, and that really now that we've gotten the loans behind us, the challenge for my team and I is to integrate these verticals more effectively to produce greater results.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
And next we have the partner to economic development, Department of Workforce Development, Frank Brickner. Welcome to the committee.
Good morning. Frank Brickner, the Deputy Director of Workforce Development. And the first thing I want to say is workforce development is Ohio means jobs. The state of Ohio pretty much said, hey, workforce areas for these grants, these federal grants, we want a common brand across the state. So we were named Ohio means jobs, Cleveland, Cuyahoga County. So when you see the Department of Workforce Development, it is Ohio means jobs. As I mentioned, we are the public workforce system. We are in place to develop the necessary skills to help individuals find employment and help businesses find qualified workers to meet their present and future workforce needs. We need to help job seekers get those additional skills. We are a department comprised of both Cuyahoga County and City of Cleveland personnel. Cuyahoga County is the fiscal agent, contracting, and part of Ohio means jobs, and we employ 12 FTEs. The City of Cleveland administrative entity employs 8. We meet monthly with county and city leadership to coordinate our services. We talk about the delivery of services and how to expand the analysis of service delivery data. Our budget in front of you for 2020 is approximately $15 million, only $500,000 of which is local dollars. That's the county scholarship dollars. This allows over 100 county residents each year to get funding up to $5,000 for them to complete their credential training or a diploma, and it's most utilized at Cuyahoga Community College and Cleveland State. We've had pretty good success, and I think I'm presenting tomorrow to the Education Committee that typically over 90%, around 90% complete training, and over about 3/4 of that get a job in that occupation trained. The remainder of our funds are federal in nature, typically from the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, WIOA. Of the WIOA funds, we get approximately $5 million earmarked to serve young adults. One of the exciting things this past year is we partnered with Job and Family Services for TANF dollars, and we had one RFP. TANF dollars contributed $10 million. We contributed $5 million what we had. So we have one RFP process and one contracting process to serve young adults. We are able to serve 3,000 economically disadvantaged youth to provide them work experiences, internships, career training, credential training, emphasizing healthcare, IT, and manufacturing. That was a good thing. The braiding of funds allows us, there are some services that perhaps TANF can't pay for or WIOA can't. And if we co-enroll as many youth as we can braid the funds to better serve that youth. Also with TANF funds, every 6 months there's an eligibility redetermination. That doesn't exist with WIOA. So if somebody's getting served and then lose their TANF eligibility, we can continue serving them with WIOA funds. We have 6 agencies that we are contracted with to provide services to our young adults. But it was a real win-win to partner with Job and Family Services to contribute more dollars into the system to kind of, coordinate the services. The remainder of our budget, approximately $10 million, is to serve adults and businesses. Over the past year, we served 15,111 unique visitors. We enrolled 4,500 individuals into our services. Why don't we enroll all 15,000? Because in the public workforce system, you can get self-service. So individuals can come to us, go into a resource room. We can assist them to look for jobs and that, but they may not need individualized services. So 4,500 came to us and needed individuals or requested individualized services, so we are assisting them. We helped 3,261 individuals get employed at an average hourly rate of approximately $14 an hour. What are some of the individualized services we can do besides job search? We can help individuals develop their resume, interviewing skills, some counseling. We also offer GED services. We partner with the libraries and Cuyahoga Community College, who offers the GED, and we offer GED on site at our comprehensive one-stop. Most of the services we offer, we have a comprehensive one-stop at 1910 Carnegie Avenue, but besides that, we're being more involved in the community. We are presently at 9 libraries, 2 neighborhood family service centers, Quincy Place and Old Brooklyn. We are now at 2 recreation centers, and now we received a special opioid workforce grant from the state, $600,000, that now we are working on site at some of the residential treatment facilities or sober housing facilities to provide individuals who are pretty long on their recovery and their treatment to try to get them back engaged in the workforce. So we are at Stella Maris, Whitehaven, Community Assessment Treatment Services, and a couple sober living facilities to help get the individual to transition back into the world of work. We provide occupational skill training in in-demand occupations. Our goal is to train at least 600 individuals this fiscal year. This is in addition to the 100 individuals who are trained through our county scholarship. Our focus really is healthcare, manufacturing, and IT, although I will say the largest training area still remains truck driver for us. That's the one that individuals come to us saying, I need money now and I can get a CDL in 6 weeks and be making pretty good money. But other than truck driving, we do a lot of RNs, LPNs, and IT-related disciplines. We offer services to employers. We have a contracted team with backgrounds in HR as well as sales to assist employers with their hiring and training needs. They will host recruitment events for an employer or a group of employers. We do work, as Mr. Carter indicated, we work with development to better meet the needs of employers, including the marketing of Skill Up. We're continuing to work together. How do we more effectively approach an employer with the services we can offer so we can identify the whole range of services? We are part of the Cuyahoga County Workforce Funders Group Sector Partnership Initiative. Not only did we contribute $100,000 to this initiative, but we committed money down the line. We've committed $600,000 going forward of training funds for the talent pipeline to support this initiative. We do have partnerships with Cuyahoga Community College. They are our largest occupational skill training provider. They offer GED that we utilize, and they have a young adult contract. So that's an overview of our budget. There are no budget reductions or elimination of programs identified in this 2020 budget. New initiatives are usually tied to new funding. If there is a grant opportunity available that's in our mission, we will pursue it, and then we can pursue new initiatives. And we have no additional funding requests before you. And I'm done with my feedback.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation, and Councilman Tron is first.
On your scholarships, your $500,000 of scholarships, you indicated they're predominantly used in Cuyahoga County, in Tri-C, and at Cleveland State?
Yes.
Can you tell me what that percentage is?
Over the past year, we've approved 52 in 2019 of 103.
50?
So 52 of 103, so slightly over 50% are going to those two schools.
So let me go the other way then.
Sure. Where
You're only one number switched and you're below 50%.
Where else are they going? I know Hondros School gets a lot of
Where's
LPNs. Hondros School, they're a nursing school. We do a lot there. Tech Elevator for IT. We do a bit. We do finish individuals who may be going to Kent State, Akron. We provide an overview tomorrow, and I would be happy to share because we list where individuals are going. There's a whole range of schools. I did want to comment on our...
So 50% of the kids are leaving Cuyahoga County, but for one number. You said 52 out of 103, so that's pretty close to 50-50. So half of the students are taking Cuyahoga County tax dollars and spending it outside of Cuyahoga County.
Many of the schools beside Tri-C and Cleveland State are within Cuyahoga County, but there are a number who are finishing a degree, Cuyahoga County residents, who are finishing a degree outside of Cuyahoga County, yes, with the intention of coming back to Cuyahoga County when they're completed and working.
What percentage are going to school outside of Cuyahoga County using Cuyahoga County tax dollars?
I can look that up and provide an overview for you. I don't think it's 15, 20% maybe.
It used to be 100% had to go into a Cuyahoga County-based school, did it not?
No, I don't think so. It has to be 100% have to be Cuyahoga County residents.
Okay.
But to my knowledge, it never was a requirement that it had to be a Cuyahoga County school.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilman Tuma is first, followed by Conwell.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair, how do you track the individuals who apply for the various programs? How do you track them?
There is a state-required database, OCMS, and I'm forgetting what the acronym stands for, but the state mandates that any individual who gets individualized services, we have to put what activities, what services. As soon as we start putting them in, we're accountable for them. We have to track them the whole way. We are held accountable whether they're successful getting employed or not, but that's a state-required database.
And just as a follow-up through the chair, if there's a database keeping track of this, do you keep track of average starting salaries? And do you know what that might be?
The average starting salary is $14 an hour for the individuals we employed last year.
Okay. All right. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Ms. Conwell.
Thank you through the chair to Mr. Brickner. I also was going to ask about how you attract individuals, but my other one would be in your presentation, did you mention anything about helping the Office of Homeless Services, the individuals that are in there?
I did not mention anything about homeless services. We do work with various county entities. I'm not going to say that we have a very strong partnership. That could be something we look into, especially with some of the opioid dollars and expanding into perhaps some of the
I was looking at, I think it's, do you utilize some of the Skill Up funding?
We promote it to our businesses in the community. Our business team will promote Skill Up. We don't use it, but we will promote it to eligible businesses.
Okay, this is a conversation that I've had with Director Gillette about, and she feels the same way, is that we help and motivate the individuals that are in that, under her auspices at the moment. So I don't know, maybe we can talk offline a little bit more about that.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Baker.
Yes, getting back to the 500,000 scholarship, of the 52% that stay in Cuyahoga County, which would mean that 48% do not?
No, I just wanted to say that 52% go to Cuyahoga Community College or Cleveland State. There's other educational institutes within Cuyahoga County, and I will provide council with a breakdown of what percentage that is.
Good. And from recollection, you think it's about 15%?
I
we're
think
down?
so, yes.
Okay. Is there a reason that 15 or 20%, do we not offer those services here? Is that why they have to go outside the county?
Well, here's part of the issue is there could be a county resident who is finishing their degree at Akron University and struggling to come up with the last quarter of tuition. That's the typical. We have relationships with financial aid counselors throughout various schools, and the financial aid counselor, for example, at Akron or whatever, may say you may want to touch base to see if you could qualify for scholarship money to help you finish your degree.
All right. And all those students receiving the scholarship are all Cuyahoga?
Yes, that is a requirement.
Or I would like to have, I won't be at the education committee, so I would like to have, if we can, those numbers.
Sure.
Take a look at what it's being used for. The other question I had, if you don't mind, Chair, it looks like we have, as with other things that we try to remedy, many different organizations working on the same. We have Workforce Funders Group, we have the Workforce Development, and then now we have the Department of Development, all working on workforce training. So, and I'm sure there's other organizations out there. So how is it that we have, I mean, do you ever see any duplication of services? Do you see you kind of blending or tripping over each other, trying to reach the same?
I think some of that occurs, but I think when we meet monthly, we're kind of helping breaking down some of those silos. So, you know, our business team, how can we more effectively market? You know, we have an employer who comes to us saying, hey, we need additional folks. But we can also come back and say, here are some of the training incentives, including Skill Up. So, you know, I think it's an opportunity with the various departments. How do we kind of market better all of what we do?
So you feel that even though, and use the word silos, which we have seen in other agencies trying to create a solution, you don't think there's any duplication? You don't think there's any?
I can't say that, but I think we're trying to break down where there may be duplication. I mean, you have different departments banging on employers' doors. How do we do that more effectively so you don't overwhelm an employer?
Right. Do you find that sometimes?
I think that probably exists to some extent.
Okay. All right. Thank you. One other, the Skill Up, how involved are you in that? Because I know Department of Development is invested in Skill Up. So are you?
We are not. All we will do is market that service for employers.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Cuyahoga County Planning Commission, Susan Enfield. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you very much. Hello, Susan Enfield, Interim Director of the Cuyahoga County Planning Commission. Thank you very much for having me here this morning. As you know, our ability to exist is established by state statute, but we were established here in Cuyahoga County on August 1st, 1988, to strengthen the planning arm of county operations. County Commissioner Mary Boyle at the time stated the goal in establishing a county planning commission was to have a means to evaluate and plan long and short-term solutions to those problems faced in common by all 59 cities, villages, and townships in the county. Such problems could be population and job loss, economic development, solid waste, infrastructure, and environmental management, and the delivery of public and human services. So from that, our mission is to inform and provide services in support of the short and long-term comprehensive planning, quality of life, environment, and economic development of Cuyahoga County and its cities, villages, and townships. So I wanted to present to you the services that we offer. And as you know, the budget that's being presented is pretty much a flat budget for our agency. We are a staff of 14, but soon we will be a staff of 15 when a permanent director is announced. That includes 14 people who are, and a contracted planner, along with 2 interns typically every semester. So the services we offer are community planning, which are community master plans, zoning studies, park and green space plans, and community surveys. We also are involved in regional efforts with partners. The Cuyahoga County Climate Change Action Plan, Cuyahoga Greenways Plan, the Arizona Alliance, Creating Healthy Communities, most commonly known through the supermarket assessment that was done, Economic Development Place Break Framework. We did that work for the Department of Development. And then most recently, the public access to the lakefront work that we did for the Department of Public Works. We designed the maps showing where the access points could be. We also work with census data and mapping of that information for the Department of Regional Collaboration. We do a lot of data and mapping services, including the current update that's underway of the county urban tree canopy. A report will soon be published. We also offer grants management services for the Ohio Public Works Commission grant programs for state capital infrastructure improvements and Clean Ohio green space conservation. And additionally, we are doing grants management for the Department of Sustainability's Healthy Urban Tree Canopy Grant Program. And you'll see that dollar amount listed in our agency budget. So for 2019, just to keep you current on what we're working on, we have either produced or in process of producing 4 guidebooks, which are how-to information guides for municipalities to use for setting up community reinvestment areas, special improvement district, streetscape improvements, water trails, and also for solar placement in their communities. We've also completed master plans in the following communities this year in 2019. Strongsville, Brecksville, Parma, Woodmere, and Mayfield Village we're just about finished with. Our current planning studies underway are master plans in Broadview Heights in Brooklyn, a Bay Village overlay zoning district for the Village Center and Dover Junction business areas, Rocky River zoning code update, a Westlake Center Ridge Road corridor plan. Regional partnerships, which we've completed this year, include the Cuyahoga County Climate Change Action Plan, and that was an initiative of the Department of Sustainability, but we worked with them closely to produce maps and research information. Additionally, another completed regional plan is the Cuyahoga Greenways Plan, which we did in conjunction with the Metro Parks and NOACA. Additionally, as I had mentioned earlier, the 2019 update of the Cuyahoga County Urban Tree Canopy. Our agency offers our planning services in the form of grants to municipalities who apply for them annually. So this year, the awards have gone to the City of East Cleveland for a park and green space plan, to the City of Solon for a travel and connectivity plan, to the City of Middleburg Heights for a master plan, to the Village of Brooklyn Heights for a master plan, and to the City of South Euclid for a Mayfield Road form-based zoning code along that corridor. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention is we work with partners on transportation for livable community efforts, and those are grants offered through NOACA for a variety of planning purposes. So we are currently working on a community confluence TLCI project, which will connect the cities of Lakewood and Rocky River and the Cleveland Metro Parks all to the Rocky River Reservation through and using the bridges on Clifton, Detroit, and Hilliard roads. So just wanted to give you a brief synopsis of what we're doing, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Councilman Tuma.
Thank you, through the chair. I couldn't but help notice your title is Interim Director. So are there any plans in the works with respect to becoming a full-time director?
Well, I threw my hat in the ring, but I think a decision was made elsewise. So I am currently, besides being the interim director, also managing special initiatives for the agency. Okay. So I will continue doing that.
Okay, I was just curious about that. And then, so you guys are part of the lakefront project?
The public access,
the public
yeah.
access.
It's principally a project of the Department of Public Works, but in terms of researching access points and mapping them so that people can have a visual representation at public meetings, we provide those services through our GIS section of the agency.
Right, okay. All right, I appreciate that, and thank you for your presentation.
Sure.
And maybe the future director can ask you for help next year, because you did a good job.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Ms. Baker.
Thank you, and it does look like you do quite a bit of work out there. I thank you for that. What is your budget for the county per year? I know you get a lot of grants and things.
Right, it's a little bit less than 2 million. I believe it's 1.8. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, 2.8. I forget about that extra $1 million. Just forgot. But it's all grant money that all we're doing is acting as the fiscal agent, and it's being dispersed to communities and nonprofits who've actually gotten the grant award for the Urban Tree Canopy grant.
The sustainability department, how do you work with them? How is it that, say, for example, I believe we have, and you can tell me, Maggie, if I'm wrong, 4 million going into the, is that managed by this county planning commission, the trees and the, okay, so that's a $4 million, no, so can you?
Yeah, actually, it's intended to be a 5-year grant program with $1 million being dispersed annually.
But there's a $4 million amount per year, with 1 million of that being the trees. So the other, are they managing the other 3 million that we're putting into that? No.
Maggie Keenan, Office of Budget Management, likely no.
Okay.
But as I had mentioned before, the details of how that money is going to be allocated are not completely firm yet. But I think it's largely going to be, I don't know who's going to manage it, but it's largely going to manifest itself in the Department of Public Works and the Department of Development.
Okay, and if I understood earlier, they're managing it, but those monies are allocated and we do not vote on that anymore. That is in the budget. Is that true? Safe? Okay.
You're talking about the additional $4 million, not the tree money?
Well, say 4 million does include the tree money, right? It's 4 million a year times 5 years.
That's
20
correct.
million.
That's correct. So the $1 million for the trees, you will vote on with this piece of legislation, which is the budget. And then my understanding is you will not vote on the disbursements because those are made at the discretion of the commission, right, your board of directors. So that does not come back to the council. Okay. The remaining dollars, you likely will have an opportunity to vote on. We tend to appropriate the road and bridge projects as they come. So there is a certain amount that we budget every year, but you're likely going to see those again. Those are also large dollar amounts, so you will likely not only get a request for the appropriation, but a request to also actually expend the dollars. If not in council, certainly in Board of Control, which you sit on. And then the same would be said for the Department of Development. We appropriate those loans and the majority of what they do on as they come. So as council approves an economic development loan, then we will turn around and appropriate it. We do not tend to do that at the beginning because we end up with huge surpluses.
Sure. Okay. So outside of the tree allocation of $1 million for 5 years, and in this budget it's $2 million, that is being managed by the Cuyahoga County Planning Commission, right?
Well, I don't want to speak for it. The Susan's operation is certainly the fiscal manager of that, so the money is in their budget and they are taking the lead on the disbursements, but my understanding is that it's in cooperation with Soil and Water and Sustainability. So the Department of Sustainability, the Soil and Water Conservation District, and the Planning Commission are all working jointly on how those dollars and where those dollars get allocated.
Okay, so our department, our county department of sustainability is not involved.
They're involved in the allocation of the dollars and the planning process, but the money is not in their budget.
Okay, that helps clarify it. I appreciate it.
Okay. Councilman Schrock.
But doesn't a rose smell a lot like a rose? I'm sorry, but the county money is going into that department. It's then going to be spent by that department, by Mr. Foley, and as far as the allocation, is that what you're telling us? Our one time and our only time, if we don't agree with spending $4 million more on top of the $1 million we've already spent, when we have other things to be spending our money on, is right now. Is that what you're telling us? I mean, because once this budget is passed, the first $2 million, the next $2 million, after the initial $1 million that we've already put into the trees, is right now on this budget.
As it relates to the trees, that's correct.
That's correct.
As I mentioned to the councilwoman when she asked her question, you will get another opportunity to vote on appropriation and awards in the Department of Development, in the Department of Public Works, anything else that sustainability might do. For the trees, your one and only time is with this piece of legislation. I don't know if any council members sit on your commission. I mean, so there might be, okay. So Councilwoman Brown does sit on the Board of Directors for the Planning Commission, so there is some representation there, but their distributions do not go through the Board of Control process. They do not go through County Council. So if you appropriate the $1 million that's being requested per year in this biennial budget, yes, you are agreeing to that distribution of dollars.
Okay, so the pilot program that we were told this year is already moving way past the pilot. We haven't even, I mean, all that first $1 million is already in the can.
The first $1 million has been spent or at least awarded, absolutely. I'm not sure where you're getting the impression that this was a pilot program, though.
Because we were told that when it was brought to us, that we were going to get a chance to review each one of these activities, and this is what, as an individual activity. So now what you're saying is it's going to be in the total budget.
For the $1 million, yes.
Yeah.
I don't believe I said that council was going to approve each individual activity.
For each one of the $4 million?
For the trees?
Yeah.
No, I don't believe I said that. And the executive had made clear this was a 5-year commitment.
Okay, well, let's go back and we'll review the record because I believe every one of us thought we were going to get a chance to review those. Thank you.
Okay.
Let's go to, wait, I have another question in regards to the.
Ask a follow-up on
Sure.
Okay. Ms. Enfield,
I did too.
when would you start the process for the tree program for 2020, presuming that it's approved? When would you start the process of putting out the opportunity for the community agencies to apply?
Thank you. Fairly soon into the new year, the $1 million that was approved for projects for 2019, was approved later in the year. So by the time we notified municipalities of this opportunity, it was already well into the summer months. And typically, when a municipality is planting trees, they do it in the spring or in the fall. And so we wanted to, in the next round of funding, if it's available, to be able to offer communities that opportunity to plant their trees early, either in the spring or in the fall. Right now, the communities that were awarded funds are planting them this fall, unless they don't have enough time. If the ground is too hard, then they might actually have to be planting them next spring. It's a reimbursable grant, so I'm happy to explain about that. I was not familiar with the overall tree dollar amount that you had mentioned, the $4 million. What we do, and the reason why I forgot that million, was because that was not the normal part of our operations until this year, when we became the fiscal agent for those grant funds that are being dispersed. So that's why, I made the mistake with the extra million. But again, we're the fiscal agent for that grant. The decision committee, as far as who gets the grant awards, is made up of members from the Department of Sustainability, the Planning Commission, Soil and Water Conservation District, and the Board of Health. We evaluate those grants, make the awards, and then from there, the communities do whatever it is that they were awarded, and then submit invoices to us for reimbursement, us meaning the Planning Commission.
Councilman Tron still has the floor. He just granted me a follow-up.
Thank you, Mr.
Councilman
Chairman.
Toomey is next.
I can't speak for my other colleagues, but I can tell you I preface my vote that we would get a look at everyone after that, and I'll let you see the nods of the heads up here, and they're telling you the same thing. I'd be willing to bet. There may be other nods that are going the other way, but whatever, I was on the clear impression that this was a pilot for $1 million, and that we would get a chance to look at the other $4 million before it got rolled into a 2-year budget. The 30-mile path along the lake. Are you involved? Is your department, your agency involved with that?
We're involved to the extent that Public Works needs our assistance to develop the maps and the visual representations of what that would look like.
What is the cost of just the development and the maps and all of that you're doing right now?
We actually just very recently produced them, and we do our invoicing at the end of the month. This would not be an item that we would invoice a fellow department for. I can get you that information. I don't think it was a lot of money, maybe a couple of thousand, something like that.
Okay, because my understanding, and I'm not sure whether the facts are correct, but we're looking at around 30 miles at $15 million per mile is what the numbers I've heard.
Yeah,
That's $450 million to create a path.
It's a very innovative idea.
Could you say expensive too?
Well, I think they're actually still working out the cost, because it depends on the topography, what's there. Not all of the path would be on the lakefront. They would incorporate components of the Cuyahoga Greenways plan, some of which is off-road and would be striped bicycle lanes. So, for instance, in a Bay Village area, the roadway, Lake Road, could become striped bike lanes if it were to be wide enough. So that's the type of engineering that the Department of Public Works is actually still trying to uncover, so that they can come up with the total accurate cost. I would, if I may, like to follow up regarding the idea of the tree grant being a pilot project. The Cuyahoga County Planning Commission is going to be providing the County Council with an annual report, so that you have all of the metrics for 2019, and you will have that report in your hand before the end of the year, so that you can see what was awarded, and then you'll be able to determine in your own mind the value of this program.
But not before we're going to be asked to vote on this budget.
It's possible for us to come to produce the awards. We just won't be able to tell you the exact number of trees that were planted, because it's in process right now.
Well, can you get it to us before we have to decide on a budget?
What is your final date on that?
December 10th.
Let our chairman,
Oh, December 10th? Oh, yeah, we can get you something by December 10th,
Okay.
before then.
thank you.
Okay, we have Councilman Tuma followed by Brown.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, through the chair. You had mentioned your office was now the fiscal agent for the grant?
For the tree
For
canopy
the tree
grant, yes.
canopy grant. So why your office and not the Department of Sustainability, where that whole project was coming from?
The County Planning Commission has a lot of experience with managing large dollar grants. The Ohio Public Works Commission State Capital Improvement Program funding that we manage is a little over $30 million. So we are used to managing large dollar amounts. For that, we are not the fiscal agent, we are the administrator for that program. And then also for the Clean Ohio Green Space Conservation Funds, it's a little bit over $3 million this year. So because we have a structure in place in our agency that has to do with grants management and these large dollar grants, sustainability, and I can't really speak for Mr. Foley, but I mean, we have spoken in the past. He thought that we would have the capacity and the experience and the expertise to appropriately manage these funds.
Okay, would you be interested in handling an ERP? No, I'm teasing. Okay, that was all right. All right, I had to. As far as well, I just want to go back to the Lake Erie path. It's more than just a path. I mean, it's kind of lots of big plans there, lots of big ideas there. So a public works director and I spoke regarding that, and that might even include changing some routes on the highway and that sort of thing. So it's a very big idea at this point, and we're just the initial stages here. So I just want to clarify that a bit, right? It's not like we're doing a small little Metro Park path.
No, but there are examples, and not even very far from here. The City of Chicago moved Lakeshore Drive. They reconfigured the entire Lakeshore Drive, and this was within the past 30 years.
Right.
So
right. I don't think anybody would be against like changing Dead Man's Curve a little bit. I'm just while we're out there. All right. Thank you.
Councilwoman Brown.
Thank you, Councilman Miller. I just want to clarify the record because Councilman Simon and I do sit on the Planning Commission. The one thing I think where Councilman Schrein and I agree on is that I feel like it was presented to us as a pilot project subject to the results this year in determining on how we would spend future dollars. But there, to my recollection, was no indication that we would determine the allocation of the resources as it was going to be distributed to the communities because we had no expertise. There were going to be some dollars attributed to arborists to make sure that those funds are utilized properly. And I think Director Foley could speak more to that, maybe perhaps when he comes up afterwards. But this was initially a pilot, but not with us determining how those dollars were going to be allocated. So I just want to, and Sonny Simon would probably fight far more vigorously than I am right now to clarify the record, but I do just want to put that out there for the councils on the council side as members who sit on the Planning Commission. So,
Councilman Gallagher.
Yeah, it was a pilot project, and I preface my vote verbally as to let's see how we do with this $1 million, because I knew I'd get heat, and I did. After the awards, didn't just go to cities, went to organizations. And how an organization bumps a city, I don't know. But I felt confident that my home city of Strongsville would certainly be part of the program. And then I was interested to find out that they didn't qualify. So we have a full-time arborist, and so we take our trees seriously in Strongsville. And I kind of let her have it when I saw her, and she goes, oh, no. Because I was told we only had 2 streets in the program. She goes, Mike, she goes, you know better than that. She goes, call the state arborist from Northeastern Ohio. So I did, who evidently testified in front of you guys. And he goes, Mike, they didn't listen to a word we said. So I will never vote for another tree program again. In his actual, he said, the best thing you should have done, he said, take the $1 million, give it to Cleveland and pull out all the dead trees. He goes, they're going to plant $1 million worth of trees. They're going to die. And he goes, I've been here 28 years. I know what I'm talking about. He goes, this tree canopy is ridiculous. He goes, you got to take care of them if you plant them. He goes, they'll plant them, they're going to die. He goes, this is totally misrepresented to you guys as far as what they're doing. It's not going to work the way they're doing it. They're not listening to experts. And to get a city that has an arborist on board to get bumped for an organization, you're never going to get my vote again, ever. But it was presented as a $1 million with 4 to come. That's how it was presented. That's how I prefaced my vote. Shake your head all you want. That's what happened. Go back to the tape. It's exactly what I said, and that's what happened.
Thank you, sir. I think, we will make our case in the report. I hope that you will read it. Mr. Seward did not testify before us. We offered an opportunity for all interested parties, any party that was interested in applying for the grant, to come to a workshop. And he came to the workshop and he stated his thoughts on the grant. Mm-hmm. But I think when you see the projects that were awarded, that some of them remove trees, some of them plant trees, some of them were awards for communities to develop a plan so that they know what to do with their trees. So some communities had arborists, some need to hire the arborist to develop the plan. So I think if you'll give me the opportunity when I present that report to you, it'll be in writing.
And
if you'll
I don't know
read
if you got it through our office, but I asked for that. I said, wherever they plant the trees, let's try and follow that the best we can. But initially, it was a $1 million with potentially $4 million to come. I'm like, let's give it a roll.
Right.
Why not? I'll take the early on heat. Now I'm being told it's a $5 million program.
Well, I think what we were hoping was that you would agree that it was a good program, and that's why the $1 million is in the budget, and that's why we're here. It's up to you to make that decision.
We too shall get through this.
Maggie Keenan, Office of Budget Management. When the $1 million was appropriated, that was on a June fiscal agenda, and it was clearly stated in the agenda that this was a $5 million program, and that was approved by council. So again, I apologize, and I'm not entirely sure where the word pilot came from, but that was not communicated by OBM, and I know that the executive communicated in his State of the County speech that this was a $5 million investment over 5 years.
Okay, well,
we'll get through it.
Everybody else has weighed in on this, so I'm going to do so as well. And my belief is that yes, there was a clear stated intention that this was intended to be a 5-year program. So in that sense, the word pilot is maybe not the best choice of words. However, when we passed the first $1 million, there was a clear discussion. We discussed it in the council and when we did the fiscal item, and there was a clear discussion that we would have an opportunity to review the results of the first year program before making a final decision on whether to approve it for the second year and the third year and the fourth year and the fifth year. And so I think we're going to think about creating a more formal opportunity to do that. So that's my take on it. Any other comment or discussion? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And I think we've gone as far as we can go without impinging on the, I think people need to have, how many here are on the 1 o'clock committee? So what we're going to do is that we're going to have soil and water and sustainability come back, and we're going to schedule it for 1:45 p.m. on Monday, the 4th. That would be immediately after the Finance and Budget. Are other people okay to keep going?
Let's just get it, yes. Get it going.
Okay, I'm hearing that people are willing to give up their break before 1 o'clock, and we're going to try to finish it. So, next we have Jan Ribka, Soil and Water Conservation.
Nothing like following. You got me all energized and everything. So, good afternoon. It is afternoon, and I'll be short and sweet. I'm Jan Ribka. I'm the director of the Cuyahoga Soil and Water Conservation District. We are a political subdivision in the state of Ohio. We've had a relationship with Cuyahoga County for 70 years. It is our 78th year anniversary. Our mission is to advocate and implement best management practices for conservation of land and aquatic resources in a developed environment through education, stewardship, and technical assistance. We have 4 departments, not including administration. We have our conservation and stormwater education, and that program reaches out to the general public in Cuyahoga County, as well as to schools and with teachers with a myriad of programs. We have our watershed programs, and that's focused on watershed, stream restoration, watershed protection of ultimately Lake Erie, because all of our streams in Cuyahoga County actually flow to Lake Erie. Our stormwater pollution prevention program, which is helping to keep that sediment out of our streams. Sediment is the #1 pollutant in Ohio. So this is work that we have done since our inception in 1949, providing that landowner assistance to keep that soil on the land. And soil is a very, very important natural resource, as is water. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And our stormwater pollution prevention program, we're out on construction sites across the county of 1 acre or greater, looking at those best practices to keep that pollution and have it treated on site rather than have it run off. And then we're also, with the cities that we work with, providing long-term operations and maintenance inspections of post-construction facilities. So if you've seen those retention ponds and bioretention, those kind of water quality treatments, they need to be maintained like any other kind of infrastructure. So we have a program in place that we go out there and we provide that landowner assistance to those landowners that have those kind of facilities on their property. And lastly, our natural resource conservation and urban agriculture program. Soil and water are natural resources. Urban agriculture really took off in the mid-2000s. It's kind of reached a equilibrium. But, we're talking about trees, and trees are a natural resource. And we've been planting trees for as long as I've been at the Soil and Water Conservation District, focused usually in the riparian area, so along the stream banks, because those trees provide habitat. They help slow down the stormwater, and they help keep our waters cool and clean. Our theme this year was slow it down, spread it out, and soak it in. And hence, that's the reason that we really have been focusing not just on trees over these past few years, but as soil as well, because the trees help slow down the water and the soil. And we don't have healthy soils in Cuyahoga County. We're a very urban district. Healthy soils are going to help attenuate that stormwater. And so healthy soils, healthy clean air and water is a benefit to everybody in this county. I talked about our program areas. We have a staff of 13, 2 in administration, 2 in conservation education, 4 in stormwater pollution prevention, 2 in natural resource protection, and 3 in watershed protection and restoration. Good news is we're not requesting any more money from the county. We're happy to say that the $100,000 subsidy that we received from you not only is matched by the state of Ohio, and for the first time in many years, that matches up to 72%. So that's excellent for us. It really helps us strengthen and expand our programs. But also that $100,000, I budget about 1.2. We're leveraging those county dollars by 90%. So that's a pretty good return on your investment. In terms of new initiatives, we are updating our strategic plan. Like the county, we utilize Baldwin Wallace University to do outreach, and they've conducted random surveys, random interviews or surveys of county residents, and then some stakeholder surveys as well. I know some of the county council people were added to that list. We're going to use that strategic plan to identify if we are on the right track and where we need to go in the future. I think we've done really well staying within our mission over all these years, and it's done really well for ourselves. One of the things we can see as probably being a part of our new strategic plan is the governor's H2O Ohio. If you're aware of what's happening with the algal blooms, especially in the western Lake Erie Basin, we know that 85% of that pollution problem is coming off of agriculture farm fields, but you know, pollution is everybody's problem. We're all part of the problem. We all need to be part of the solution. And soil and water conservation districts around the state of Ohio are going to be playing a big role in that initiative as well. So in 2020 and 21, we're going to continue to implement our projects and initiatives under our 4 program departments. We are going to expand on the tree canopy. Like I said, we've been planting trees for a very, very long time. But it's not about planting trees and your questions before. We're really proud to be a part of this initiative. And it's because I think of the tree plantings that we have done over the years. And it's not about, it's about the canopy. It's about stormwater management. It's about health and human services, because trees help filter out those pollutants in the air. They're putting, they're putting oxygen back in the air. But it's not just about planting trees. Anybody can put sticks in the ground. It's about growing trees. So one of the things that we're doing that I know you're really concerned about those dollars and how they're spent is that we agreed to take our skills and expertise of being out and helping landowners, and we're going out to the sites where those trees are planted, as they're being planted, to make sure that those contractors are following best practices for planting. That means that the hole is dug right, that means the soil amendments are there, that means the tree's not getting buried too deep and the mulch is not being volcano mulched. And in that process, we have the ability and the opportunity to do what we do all the time, and that's educate the public. And it's an everyday it's an everyday element of our program and what we do, because you have to keep reminding people. And I'm just even coming over here, I saw business right there in 30th and Perkins that planting trees and doing some screening, and we're going to be out there and talking to those folks and make sure that if you're going to plant a tree, it's an investment. County invested in this program. We want to make sure that we can do our best, along with sustainability and county planning, to make sure that that money and that you agree that it is money well spent. So with that said, tree canopy and our soil remediation, we're working on some vacant lots right now, doing some pilot projects. We're going to continue that effort and continue with all the programs that we do. Notice in the county and in the budget plan that collaboration is really, really important to the county and county executive. And we don't work with all the county departments, but we have since the charter, new county government. We do work with Department of Public Works, and we're implementing a program for them. Accounts payable, of course, they're great. Office of Budget and Management has been just guided me over the last 18 years. County planning and sustainability, of course. County Board of Health's big partner, and of late, because of our 70th anniversary with the video and photography department, those guys created an awesome 90-second video, and they're working with us to do some educational videos as well. So again, we are happy to receive the money. We hope we're doing you proud and demonstrating that we're good caretakers of those county funds and presenting our programs for the benefit of the public in Cuyahoga County.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
Yep.
Questions? Ms. Conwell.
Through the chair to Director Ripka, is there a certain time frame or maintenance that needs to occur for a tree to take hold?
Okay, so the sad fact is that most urban trees don't last more than 7 years, and that's because they haven't been planted correctly, or they're over mulched. You've seen that volcano mulching and it rots the tree. But more importantly, a tree that's planted is going to need some caretaking, especially for the first 3 years in watering. And it depends on how large the tree is. So the smaller the tree, it's going to take root, believe it or not, a little bit more quickly. And they say a tree, the first year you plant it, it sleeps. The second year, it creeps, and the third year, it leaps. Our landlord allowed us to plant the green space across from our office over on Perkins, and we planted some trees in the fall of 2017, and they're growing, and we expect next year we're going to see if this really is a true fact. We work with Alan Seward. I know how he feels about grant programs. He was involved. I spoke to him quite a lot in this planning process. The money came up really quickly, and did say with sustainability and county planning that we came up with a plan of how do you distribute that money. And we know it wasn't perfect. We're going to be sitting back at the table in just a few weeks to determine how we move forward with that project if the funding is provided.
Okay, I just want to follow up. So if it's the first 3 years, a tree needs maintenance, is the thought process if we continue the tree program, that some of those cities that are planning now will also reach back for some maintenance funds to maintain the trees?
I can't answer that question. I think that the idea was whether you're getting planning grants to assess your community and where the trees needed to be planted, or to remove the trees. So many of the trees were ash trees, and so many of the communities had to be taken down and the stump ground out, and then those that are planting. But part of the agreement is they need to water that tree. I mean, that's best practice, and we will be going out. We have a list, and we're going to be going out, and we're going to be taking a look at what was planted in the fall, what's going to be planted in the spring, and then continuing through the term of the program.
So just your department is tracking that?
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Baker.
I'm just curious on the comment you made with the 85% of farming that is the culprit of the pollution, and we're 15%. So, I mean, it's always been suspected that farming is where it's coming from, and there's been a lot of initiatives in trying to reduce the amount of chemicals, change the chemicals, and the H2O program, I think, has really identified where we are and what we need to do. So we're not a farming community here. So how many resources are really put into the advocacy of trying to reduce the chemicals that go into the lake when we're not even half, I mean, we're not even a third, we're 15% of that problem. How many resources are we spending on that?
I'm not sure I totally understand your question. Are you talking about H2O Ohio?
I'm talking about the resources that we put into preventing chemicals going into, or any type of pollutants going into the lake, when we all know that 85% of that is coming from farming.
Yeah. What's happening in the agriculture community that I can't really touch upon, being an urban kid myself, but I can say that here in Cuyahoga County, I think we do a real good job in advocating and implementing best practice to keep, to keep those pollutants out. So how much do we spend? It's part and parcel of the whole education process, everything that we do every day to tease out the exact amount. And I guess you just have to look at our budget and say it's part and parcel of that entire budget.
I guess what concerns me is we had the hard surface
Yep.
initiative where we are, identifying what business owners have in hard surface.
Correct.
And taxing them, I believe, because of that.
That's
And
right.
that is a cost of trying to keep the pollutants out of the lake. Also, the retention or detention basins that you mentioned that we put special plantings into, that's a pretty big cost to our businesses to do that in order to not cause the pollutants to enter into the lake. So those type of programs that are pretty big and tax our businesses that are trying to survive out there, given that we're only 15% of the problem, I just wonder how much of that are we really taxing our businesses for and is realistic in solving the problem when we all know that 85% of the problem comes from farming.
Okay, but that's for the harmful algal blooms and what's happening in Lake Erie. So the stormwater utility fees, that's the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, and definitely aimed at kind of reducing impervious surface. So things like those bioretention swales do help reduce the impervious surface and capture that water and slow it down. But the problem with all the hard surface, whether it's buildings or asphalt, is that water, and with these storms, it's water's coming down so hard and so fast and running off. I can tell you, every spring and after every rainfall, our office receives calls from homeowners and landowners that are very upset because their land's eroding. There's nothing we can do about that, but if we can start reducing those impervious surfaces and capture the water and slow it down, and the trees are going to help with that. Is it going to be solve all the problems? No, but every little bit helps. And in terms of the cost for somebody that's doing a speedway or something like that, and I can't tell you exactly what the costs are, the engineering costs to build a bioretention swale, but is it offset by how much less asphalt you're using? I don't know. It might be a break even. And it actually looks nicer. I think people like to go down street where they see, green and flowers, and it's aesthetically pleasing. I mean, I think that's the kind of things that are going to change the outlook of people's, mindset in Cuyahoga County, really.
Right.
We deserve to have a county that looks clean and green, so, I can't tell you exactly the figures,
Right.
about that. But
I guess the bioretention swale, that's what it's called.
yes.
In Westlake, for example, a business can't build unless they retain their water. That's just, if you're going
Right.
to build, you're going to have a retention basin. But on top of that, we also now have to build the bio retention basin where plantings and different types of vegetation have to be included in that swale, because not only are we retaining it now, but we need to clean the water as it goes through. And that's where I think, we're well intended in doing that, but going back to cleaning the water and knowing that the farming community is really what's the problem, and taxing our businesses to add this bio vegetation, which is very costly. I mean, it could be $100,000 or more to put some of that vegetation into a large retention basin.
Well, they do have, it's voluntary. There are different practices that a business can use, from underground, which has its own set of problems, to it doesn't necessarily have to be a bioretention cell with trees and plants. I would think a lot of places are landscaping anyway. So if those bioretention, cells are done correctly, they could be planted, and when they're maintained like you'd maintain any other landscaping, they can actually be a very, very nice feature. So, a lot of businesses are doing that kind of landscaping anyway, so it's part of the cost, but here it's cost benefit. It's kind of a 2-for-1 type of thing.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have to remind everybody that that our economic history is that businesses have created externalities in terms of pollution and use of resources, that they've then left it to the public sector to clean it up. And I think
That's true.
if we make some efforts to say that everybody has to do their part and clean up some of the impacts that they're creating, that's a positive thing. We're all in this together, and that's a change of mindset that we need to work toward.
Don't worry, I gave it to the agriculture community. Not that they're listening to me anyway. But,
Okay, I
just
don't
would-
see
Thank you.
anyone else.
If I can, Chair, it's just important, though, to understand that it's well-intended, and we want to do good things, and it's great if it's voluntary, but it's not really voluntary. But when these companies, especially not multi-million-dollar companies, but small businesses that want to expand and build, and then they're faced with environmental issues that are plantings inside a retention basin so that they can retain their water, which other cities perhaps mean. It's just a building of, can I afford it or can't I? Do I stay here or don't I? Can I, and those are choices that, of course, they want to landscape, but do they want to landscape their retention basin if given a choice of whether they can even afford it? And that's all I'm
But can the
saying.
public afford the flooding and that occurs? That's the other side of the story.
A whole lot of environmental damage has been done by different jurisdictions competing to see how much regulation they can get rid of so as to attract businesses, and we got to think about it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you again for our subsidy.
Okay, and our Sustainability Director, Mike Foley, is last but not least.
I apologize in advance because I have a 1 o'clock back in my office, so
Okay.
I'll stay for a few minutes.
Okay, thanks. We've got a small or a short PowerPoint to walk through. Mike Foley, Director of Sustainability for the county. We are agency's been around for about 4.5 years. Our job basically is to look at environmental clean energy matters for the county and try to weigh in and have as much positive impact as possible. In terms of the questions that Councilman Miller asked about our budget and where it is compared to past years and where we need to go, our budget is relatively flat. There's no changes from last year for the next 2 years. We have 3 full-time employees, and so our salaries and other expenses are relatively the same. If we had more money, as one of the questions you've asked, what would we spend it on? And some of the things we've talked about already are trees, right? Or clean energy, or there's a lot of other things that we could spend sustainability dollars on. But at least in terms of our budget, we're okay with our budget. Did not ask for anything above and beyond what is here now. So some of the things we've been working on is the Healthy Urban Tree Canopy Grant Program, which I'm more than happy to take questions on and criticisms about. I do want to say that when we brought forward the proposal, we came to council, and council said, hey, we want you to put together a very clean, clear process, and working with Soil and Water Conservation District and County Planning and County Health Department, we put together a metrics of kind of criteria on how we wanted to give grants out. And County Planning especially is very good at this. And so that is why we utilized their expertise and their qualifications to run the projects through County Planning. If there's other suggestions on how we should do this in the future, we're more than willing to take those into consideration. But I want to say that the program in and of itself is important. The county's tree canopy is below what the suggested level for tree canopy is. We've got a lot of cities in the county that are really low in terms of tree canopy. And it's not getting better, by the way. So the 2011 was the last census that was done, or tree canopy assessment. It's just being updated by County Planning right now, and it's going to go down. So those reports should be coming out in the next week or so. Trees are important. Some of the things we're working on. So I'm kind of proud about this, is just because it's happened in the last 2 weeks. But the county medical examiner's building now has solar panels on it. The animal shelter now has solar panels on it. Next spring, early summer, the Public Works facility in Newburgh Heights will have solar panels on it. And we've been able to use this as a way for allowing local governments to piggyback off the power purchase agreement that we had. So Lakewood now has introduced an ordinance to do 3 buildings piggybacking on our procurement process. Cleveland Heights is doing the same in the next couple of weeks. Other projects we're working on, just in terms of clean energy, we're working on the downtown microgrid. Microgrid is basically a district downtown for at least the first part. If the grid goes down, we'll be able to have local generation of electricity to keep the grid up. We just started. We're working with Cleveland Public Power, Cleveland Foundation, Cleveland State. There's a request for qualifications for developers that just went out. We expect to have the first foray of interest coming in by early November. Residential solar co-ops. So basically, this is rooftop solar for residential households. Just so you know, over the last 3 years, we've put about $50,000 into this. We've had over 100 households go solar, and it's been about $1.5 million worth of work that's been done to do rooftop solar on residences in the county. Cuyahoga County Green Bank, we're working with the Cleveland Foundation and the Gun Foundation to put together basically a fund. We hired a group called the Coalition for Green Capital. They're out of New York, I'm sorry. They've done this in a lot of other jurisdictions throughout the county. So the New York Green Bank, the Connecticut Green Bank, the California Green Bank. They've worked on a lot of big states, and they're interested in Cuyahoga County and helping us develop this fund. And then working with county planning, we're working on this solar guidebook. One of the kind of things that if we're doing this tree canopy work, it's kind of this radar that comes down, bounces back up, and you can figure out what the tree canopy is. The other thing you can do is figure out where there are natural places to do solar. And so we're working with county planning on that, but additionally, over the summer, we were able to work with NASA, and so we're trying to combine data from basically satellite data that NASA has and the LiDAR data from the county planning is putting together to put together a really comprehensive list of geography of where we can do solar at. So county planning is working with us on that. On transportation side, you've seen scooters, and now we've got this last week, Wheels came out, which are basically scooters with a seat on them. We helped bring in the UH bike system over the last couple of years, which we thought was successful over the 3 years. There's about 60,000 individual rides on UH bikes. In the first 2 months of the scooter program, they've had over 120,000 individual rides on scooters. So people seem to like them. Not saying there's not problems with them in terms of parking and riding on sidewalks, as there's still some issues. Greenway Plan is part of the Climate Change Action Plan, working with county planning again. We're working with the Public Works Department, trying to overlap where we do county road and bridge projects with County Greenway Plan. So that's moving forward. Electric vehicle charging stations, one of the things that we are woefully underprepared for is in terms of kind of the future transportation is just the amount of charging facilities we have. So we're working with NOACA right now. NOACA has put $3 million aside for EV charging stations, and then there's state money coming down the pike in the next couple months from the Volkswagen settlement, where we think we'll have a good shot of getting some extra dollars. And then just a couple of the other things, working in greenhouse gas inventory that we've been putting together since that we started last year, trying to update this year, and then on our climate change action plan. So with that, I know people have questions about trees. So
Questions? Okay, so Ms. Conwell, I heard her voice first, and then right afterward, Ms. Brown.
Through the chair to Director Foley. The solar panels that you talked about, why aren't they being thought about, or have they been thought about to put on our county-owned buildings that we own?
Well, they're on 3 of them now. So
okay.
So
well,
last
the
year,
medical examiner's building, don't believe we.
Yeah, that's a county-owned building.
Okay.
Animal shelter is a county-owned building.
Okay.
And then the Harvard Road Garage in Newburgh Heights, so that's a county-owned building. The other one we're looking at, by the way, is the, we think it's a good building, and they've got a new roof, is the J. Nenna Hunter building.
Right.
So I think that's kind of the next thing we're looking at.
Okay.
But last year we did the landfill solar project, and we won a national award for that project. It was the Solar Project of the Year award. We're kind of proud about that.
Well,
35,500 panels on it.
Well, yeah, but I really want to focus on make sure that, we're covering our own county-owned buildings and making sure that, especially with the roof costs.
Yeah, so we've got 3 buildings now that we're doing, and then I think that one's kind of Virgil Brown is probably the next. Not
Why
Virgil
was
Brown,
it-
Edna.
Oh, you talking about Virgil E. Brown?
No, not Virgil
Or
Brown.
Jane
Edna Hunter.
Okay.
And the thing with Virgil Brown is it's an 8-story building, and the roof is it's not good for solar. So
that's already been determined it's not good for solar?
yeah, it would provide maybe 1% of the electric needs for that building. 1 to
Okay,
2%.
offline, can you provide me how it was determined that those buildings would be done first over the others? Thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Brown.
Thank you very much. Along those same lines, I was just curious if you could provide us with the list of the homes. You mentioned there were 100 homes that have solar panels, and that you would be sharing the methodology to determine which communities are more, where the solar power would be a better place. I'd like to see that as well. And then finally, you talked about the $3 million from NWACA. Is that competitive distribution? How would we be able to get some of that money?
Well, it'll be for the 5-county NOACA region. Initially, they're looking at, they haven't kind of figured out where the money will go to yet, but one of the things they're looking at is where are the major work zones, so where the people are going to be driving and parking at, and so to try to enhance the ability for people to be able to drive their car and park at work. And then looking at civic centers and kind of community centers as kind of the second tier. They've done a pretty good analysis of where we need to go by 2030, how many charging stations we're going to need in the region, and it's a hefty lift. We're going to have to go pretty far. So the kind of trying to think about what are the first iterations of places we should be going to, and it's works, places where people work. So we can get you that analysis too.
On that point, I attended a NOACA meeting on this subject, and the suggestion that I put forward would be that RTA stations would be a good place to locate some charging stations. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
This completes the departmental hearings portion of the budget process. I thank everybody for hanging in extra time. There being nothing further, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much.